The morning sun streamed through the expansive windows of Denver International Airport as Claire Whitman navigated the bustling terminal. At 34, Claire carried herself with a quiet assurance. Her blonde hair was tucked neatly under a black cap, and she wore a dark gray sweatshirt with matching light gray sweatpants. A simple silver bracelet adorned her wrist, a sentimental heirloom from her grandmother. To any casual observer, Claire looked like an everyday traveler opting for comfort over style. Few would suspect she was the wife of Lucas Whitman, the billionaire tech entrepreneur who had recently acquired Altitude Air, the airline that operated Flight 903 to Boston. Claire glanced at her modest wristwatch and noted she had ample time before boarding. Lucas had offered their private jet for the trip, but Claire preferred flying commercial now and then to stay grounded in the real world. At a terminal cafe, she ordered a black coffee, paying in cash rather than using the high-limit card in her phone case. The barista smiled and made casual conversation. Boston? Business or pleasure? Family. My parents are celebrating their 40th anniversary, Claire replied, dropping her change into the tip jar. With coffee in hand, she headed toward Gate B12. Along the way, she observed fellow travelers, families with children, elderly couples, and focused business professionals. Claire had grown up modestly in rural Colorado and never lost her fascination with the stories behind everyday faces. Now boarding first class for Altitude Air Flight 903 to Boston, the gate agent announced. Claire lifted her simple backpack, a well-used one, not designer, and joined the priority boarding lane. A man in an expensive suit glanced at her attire, then did a double take. Claire was accustomed to such looks, but no longer paid them any mind. Boarding pass, please, the gate agent said with a rehearsed smile. Claire presented her phone. The agent scanned it, and the smile faltered momentarily upon seeing the first-class designation next to Claire's casual appearance. Thank you, Miss Whitman. Enjoy your flight. Claire nodded and made her way down the jet bridge, unaware that her choice of comfortable clothing would soon cause a commotion that would ripple through Altitude Air. The first-class cabin gleamed with luxury, wide leather seats, deep blue accents, and pre-departure champagne being served. As Claire stepped aboard, Diane Harmon, a senior flight attendant, looked up and momentarily froze at the sight of her. Good morning, Claire said warmly. Seat 2A, by the window. Diane's perfectly groomed expression tightened. First class is to your left. Yes, I know. Thank you. Claire moved confidently, aware of Diane's gaze trailing her. The cabin was half full, business executives, elegantly dressed women, even a TV-famous chef. Claire stowed her backpack and sat down, pulling out a well-worn paperback. Moments later, a male flight attendant named Jeremy approached her. May I see your boarding pass, ma'am? Of course, Claire replied, presenting her phone. Jeremy scrutinized it, clearly struggling to reconcile the ticket with her appearance. One moment, please. Claire watched as he and Diane whispered up front, both glancing in her direction. Other passengers pretended not to notice, though their curiosity was palpable. Diane returned, now accompanied by Caroline Marks, the lead attendant. Ma'am, there seems to be a mix-up with your seat. Claire closed her book. There's no mix-up. I'm in 2A. Caroline's smile was tight. Our system occasionally glitches. This seat is listed under as C. Whitman. That's me, Claire Whitman. Do you have ID to confirm that? Jeremy interjected. Claire exhaled slowly. You didn't ask anyone else for ID. My boarding pass was verified at the gate. Standard procedure when there's confusion, Caroline insisted. The only confusion seems to be about my attire, Claire replied calmly. Is there a dress code I missed? Our first-class passengers generally maintain a certain standard, Caroline replied, her tone edged. A man across the aisle, dressed in sweatpants himself, spoke up. I've flown first class in sweats many times. No one ever asked for ID. Caroline ignored him. Ma'am, unless you verify your ID, we'll need to reassign you to economy. Claire considered her options. She could end this by saying who her husband was. But that wasn't her way. Fine, she said, but I want your full names. This isn't over. We'll compensate you for the fare difference, Jeremy offered with a condescending smile. I don't want compensation, Claire replied. I want accountability. As she was escorted to a middle seat in economy, whispers followed her. Diane offered a half-hearted apology. Claire met her eyes. No, you're not sorry. But you might be. The next morning at Altitude Air headquarters, Chief Customer Officer Brenda Lewis reviewed a troubling rise in complaints, just as the board prepared for its quarterly review. The biggest surprise, Lucas Whitman would attend in person. Make sure the first-class crew from Flight 903 is present, Brenda told her assistant. We need positive representation. Lucas, meanwhile, prepared for the meeting in the penthouse he shared with Claire. Want me to speak to them directly? He asked. No, Claire said. This isn't about revenge. It's about change. At the meeting, Brenda opened with updates and called up Caroline to speak about first-class service. Caroline started her polished presentation, but faltered as the door opened. Claire stepped inside wearing the same outfit as the day before. Lucas stood. Some of you may have met my wife, Claire Whitman. Silence. Caroline stammered. There was a misunderstanding. No, Claire interjected. There was bias. I was judged for how I looked, not my ticket. I was asked for ID when others weren't. I was humiliated publicly. Lucas addressed the room. This isn't about one incident. It's about a culture, one that must change. Claire handed over a folder, 27 documented cases of appearance-based mistreatment. Brenda looked stricken. I didn't know. That's the problem, Lucas said. These were buried as misunderstandings. Claire continued. This isn't about protocol. It's about selective enforcement. Lucas announced sweeping reforms, mandatory anti-bias training, revamped feedback systems, and a re-evaluation of all customer-facing staff. To the crew, you'll spend time with the customer advocacy team and serve an economy. Then we'll reassess. 3 months later, Claire boarded another Altitude Air flight. Same outfit, same seat, 2A. Welcome aboard, Mrs. Whitman, Jeremy said with quiet respect. Water for now. Thank you, Claire replied. I want to thank you, he added. These past months changed me. I see things differently. Down the aisle, Diane helped an elderly man with care and dignity. Caroline nodded to Claire with genuine respect. Altitude Air had transformed. Not just procedures, but perspectives. Other airlines followed suit. As the plane soared westward, Claire looked out the window, her heart steady. The real victory wasn't in proving who she was. It was ensuring others wouldn't have to. In the months that followed, Claire's story quietly made its way into internal training sessions across the airline industry. Though she never sought attention, her calm defiance became a case study in leadership courses and HR symposiums. Meanwhile, customer satisfaction at Altitude Air reached record highs. Passengers noted not just efficiency, but dignity. One evening, as Claire and Lucas attended a private gala to support diversity in aviation, a young flight attendant approached her. Mrs. Whitman, she said nervously, I joined Altitude after hearing about what you did. I just wanted to say, thank you. You've made it easier for people like me to feel seen. Claire smiled. Then it was worth it. As the music played and conversations swirled around them, Lucas leaned close and said, You didn't just change a flight, Claire. You changed a system. She looked at him, her eyes clear and full of purpose. And we're not done yet. Because true change, Claire believed, was not a destination, but a journey, taken one respectful seat at a time. And she would keep walking down that aisle for as long as it took.